All right, today we're going to learn a little bit about distance, displacement, velocity, and calculating velocity using the guess method. But before we get to velocity, let's talk about distance versus displacement. So, distance is asking the question or answering the question, how far did something go? So when something moves, it's going to go from point A to point B. Okay? And there's some distance that it traveled between point A and point B. So distance is how far someone actually travels along that path. Displacement is merely the straightest distance from point A to point B. So really what we care about here is displacement, how far away they are from where they started. And this is also noted as change in x, okay? So this triangle thing here is called a delta. It's a Greek letter. And delta means change in. Delta means change in. And we're looking at a change in x. So if you have taken any algebra before or done any graphing, you know that a horizontal line is the x-axis, okay? Positive x on one side, negative x on the other. So change in x just means something is moving from one place to another on a line. And this distance or displacement we always measure in meters. Another thing we got to talk about is time. Time is how long it takes for something to happen. And its variable is change in, or delta t. Because we don't care about time as in it's 2 o'clock today. We care about time as in it's going to take you 15 minutes to watch this video. And that is a change in time, how much time has actually passed. And we always are going to want to measure that in seconds. And the last thing we're going to talk about, and we are going to learn how to calculate today, is velocity. So velocity is speed, but it's speed in a certain direction, which is called a vector. Okay, velocity is a vector. And velocity asks the question or answers it, how fast something is going. Its variable is v for velocity, and its units are meters per second. So really today what we're trying to do is learn to calculate velocity using some math. And we have to do that with this equation. This is the velocity equation. It says velocity equals change in x divided by change in time. So we're going to have to learn to use this equation, and to do so we use a thing called the I-guess method. The I-guess method stands for image, givens, unknown, equation, substitution, and solution. So we're going to read the question and we're going to fill out all of these parts of the I-guess method. The question says, a toy train pulls a book so that it slides across a desk at a constant speed. If the book travels 2 meters in 30 seconds, how fast was the book moving? So we're going to draw a picture with image, because image is a picture. So this is going to be my book, and it's going to be pulled by a toy train. Okay, and I'm going to have a really bad toy train. It's not actually that bad, but it's not great. So this is going to be a train pulling a book on the desk. We're going to pretend that the train is not levitating. So that's what we do in image, is we draw a picture of what's happening. And then in givens, we're going to write down the things that were given to us in the question. So the question says, the book travels 2 meters in 30 seconds. So we're going to put down 2 meters and 30 seconds. But what we really need to know here is what these things are talking about, whether they're talking about v for velocity, delta x for a displacement, or delta t for a time. And you can look at the units for this. Meters, we know, is delta x. So So I'm going to write 2 meters equals delta x. And seconds is talking about a time. So we're going to say 30 seconds equals delta t. And that's all the numbers they gave us in the question, so that's all of our givens. And we're going to move on to unknown. Unknown is just talking about what the question wants to know. And so we can read the question for that. And the question says, how fast was the book moving? Now, how fast something goes is called the velocity, which is our last variable, v. So for unknown, we're going to put v. And we're all good on that side. We'll move on to equation, E for equation. And our equation for velocity is v equals delta x over delta t. So I'm going to write that next to equation. V equals delta x over delta t. And then we're going to substitute in our numbers for our variables. So substitute just means we're going to take each given that we have. So we'll do this one first. Delta x equals 2 meters. And where we see delta x in the equation, we're going to plug in the number instead. So I'm going to put v equals 2 meters instead of delta x. And 30 seconds is our time. So I'm going to take the 30 seconds and plug it in where delta t goes. So on the bottom here, I'm going to put 30 seconds. And now all that's left to do is solve. So to solve here, you just have to type this into a calculator. 2 meters divided by 30 seconds. So 2 divided by 30. And when you do that, you get 0.06666 repeating, but we're going to round that off to 0.067. And with that, we have to put a unit, and the unit for velocity is meters per second. So our solution is 0.067 meters per second. But a velocity is how fast it's going plus the direction it's going in. So we got to look back at our picture and say what direction the book's going in. In my picture, it's going to the right, so I'm going to put 0.067 meters per second to the right. And that's all there is to the guess method. We're going to do one more problem before I let you go work on your practice. All right, so this next problem is still a toy train pulling a book. It slides across a desk at a constant speed. If the train is traveling at 0.75 meters per second, we need to figure out how far it's going to go in 2 minutes. And we're going to follow the same steps, starting with I for image. All right, so our image that we're going to draw is a book with the toy train again. My toy trains keep getting worse and worse all day. Okay, so there's my toy train pulling my book, and we're still going to the right. Now my givens are the numbers that are in the question. The numbers that are in the question are 0.75 meters per second and 2 minutes. So I'm going to write those down in givens. First given was 0.75 meters per second. Meters per second is a velocity. So I'm going to write velocity equals 0.75 meters per second. And the other given is 2 minutes. And we should all know that 2 minutes is a time. So I'm going to put delta t equals 2 minutes. However, we always need to measure time in seconds. So we need to convert 2 minutes to seconds. How many seconds are in 2 minutes? Well, to figure that out, you have to do 2 times 60. Because there's 60 seconds in a minute. You get 120 seconds. So down here next to 2 minutes, I'm going to put equals 120 seconds. And that's all of our given numbers. So we're going to move on down to unknown. To find the unknown, we're going to read the question, see what it's asking. It says the train is moving at 0.075 or 0.75 meters per second. It asks how far will it travel? How far something goes is the displacement, which is delta x. So we're going to look for delta x. Now our equation is still velocity equals delta x over delta t. But this time it is not solved for the correct variable. We're looking for delta x, but what we have is v equals something. So you can use algebra to solve this. However, I know a lot of people are not in algebra right now or don't know how to do this yet, so I'm going to go ahead and just tell you the new equation, which is delta x equals v times, this little dot is times, delta t. Okay, so this is the equation we're going to use. It's algebraically equivalent to the first one, but I'm skipping through the algebra because not everybody has had algebra yet. And now for the s right here, we're going to substitute. Just going to plug numbers in. We're looking for delta x, so we leave it alone. We put that it equals v times delta t. So for v, we had 0.75 meters per second. So I'm going to write 0.75 meters per second times delta t. Delta t is 2 minutes or 120 seconds. So I'm going to put times 120 seconds. And now I've got to do 0.75 times 120. You can use a calculator and you'll get 90. And we're doing a delta x. Delta x has the unit of meters because it's a displacement. So our answer is 90 meters. I lied. I am going to do one more problem with this because we're going to solve for time. We've only solved for distance and velocity so far, so we're going to do one that solves for time. It's still a toy train pulling a book. So once more, you get to watch me draw a book being pulled by the same toy train that I am getting worse and worse at drawing. Okay, so there's the image. Now we're going to go to the givens. And for givens, we're going to read the question and find the numbers. It says a toy train pulls a book so that it slides across the desk at a constant speed. How long will it take to travel 50 meters? So down here in givens, I'm going to put distance or displacement, delta x equals 50 meters. And our other given is that it is moving with a speed of 0.5 meters per second squared. Meters per second. Meters per second is a velocity. So I'm going to put velocity equals 0.5 meters per second. And those are the only numbers we have, so those are the only givens. And now we're going to read the question again to find, well, you know what they're actually looking for. It says, how long will it take? How long will it take is definitely a question of time. So we're going to look for delta t. And now over an equation, we have the same velocity equation. Velocity equals delta x over delta t. We need to solve it to find delta t. Using some algebraic witchcraft, you get the equation delta t equals delta x over v. And now we can just substitute numbers in. We leave delta t alone because it's what we're solving for. And for delta x, we're going to plug in 50 meters. So I'm going to put 50 meters here on top. And for velocity on the bottom, we have 0.5. So I'm going to put 0.5 meters per second on the bottom. Now you plug this into a calculator. 50 divided by 0.5. Which is 100, and we're looking at time, so that is 100 seconds. All right, so now you should know enough about calculating velocity using I guess that you can do it on your practice questions. But before you go, I want you to write down the 3 equations that we used somewhere so you can look at them while you do your new problems. There's 3 equations. Velocity equals delta x over delta t. And then there is delta x equals velocity times delta t. And lastly, there is delta t equals delta x divided by v. And whichever variable is your unknown, you use that equation for your problem. So if you're looking for velocity, you use the top one. If you're looking for distance or displacement, you use this middle one. And if you're looking for time, you use the bottom one. All right, go get calculating velocity in Google Classroom, and let me know if you have any questions.